She was smiling, but nobody saw her pain. You see, sometimes the brightest smile hides the deepest hurt, the loudest laughter covers the heaviest burden. Her pain became her power. At first, it didn't feel that way. It felt like an anchor, heavy and cold, dragging her deeper with every step she tried to take. There were days when she wondered if she would ever be able to breathe without feeling that ache in her chest, nights when the silence was too loud and the darkness felt endless. She carried memories that burned, words that cut deeper than any blade, and disappointments that weighed on her shoulders like bricks stacked one after another. But she carried them, quietly, patiently, and even when it seemed impossible, she kept moving forward. People saw her strength, but they didn't see where it came from. They didn't see the nights she cried herself to sleep, or the mornings when she had to convince herself to get out of bed. They didn't see the moments she felt like giving up, but chose to keep going anyway. That was the part nobody talked about, the silent decision to keep fighting even when no one is watching. That's where her power began, not in the loud victories, but in the quiet resilience, in the moments when she whispered to herself, just one more step. There was a time when her pain made her question who she was. It made her feel small, invisible even, like her voice didn't matter, like her dreams were slipping through her fingers and there was nothing she could do to stop it. But something inside her refused to break. It bent, yes, it cracked in places, but it didn't shatter. There was a fire in her, buried under the ashes of all the things that had gone wrong, and slowly, she learned how to make it burn again. Not because someone saved her, but because she decided to save herself. Pain can either destroy you or define you. And for a while it tried to destroy her, but she was stubborn. She wouldn't let it have the last word. She started to understand that everything she had survived, everything she had endured, was teaching her something. Every scar told a story. Every lesson carved strength into her bones. And the things that once made her feel weak, they became the very things that made her strong. She didn't just survive the storm, she became the storm. Fierce, unstoppable, unapologetic. She began to see herself differently, not as someone who was damaged, but as someone who had been through the fire and come out forged. Her pain gave her perspective. It taught her empathy, how to see people who were hurting the way she had once hurt. It taught her patience, how to wait for her time instead of chasing things that weren't meant for her. It taught her gratitude, how to appreciate even the smallest moments of peace because she knew what it felt like to have none. She realized her pain hadn't weakened her, it had armed her. With wisdom, with compassion, with a strength that didn't need to be loud to be powerful. There was a shift inside her. She no longer looked for validation from people who couldn't understand her journey. She stopped apologizing for who she was and where she had been. She stopped hiding the parts of herself that carried the most truth. And when she finally embraced her story, the whole story, not just the parts that were easy to share, she found a kind of freedom she had never known. She owned her scars. She wore them like armor, not because she wanted pity, but because she wanted to remind herself of how far she had come. And then something incredible happened. Her story started to light the way for others. People who had their own pain, their own silent battles, began to see themselves in her. She became a voice they could trust because she had lived it. She had walked through it, and she wasn't afraid to speak about it. Her vulnerability became a bridge. Her honesty became a lifeline, and her strength became contagious. She lifted others because she knew what it felt like to be weighed down. She listened because she remembered what it felt like to be unheard. She believed in people because she knew how powerful it was when someone finally believed in you. Her pain became her power because she chose to let it transform her instead of define her. She turned her wounds into wisdom, her heartbreak into healing, her losses into lessons. She took every moment that tried to break her and used it as fuel to build something stronger, something more meaningful. Her power wasn't about being invincible, it was about being unbreakable in spirit. It was about knowing that even if life knocked her down again, she would rise. And not just for herself, for the ones watching, for the ones who needed to know it was possible. She wasn't smiling to hide her pain anymore. She was smiling because she had made peace with it, because she had turned it into something beautiful, because she had learned that true strength isn't about never feeling pain. It's about feeling it, facing it, and using it to rise higher than you ever thought you could. That was her power. And it came from the very thing she thought would destroy her. The misunderstanding of she's okay is one of the quietest tragedies in the world. It's the assumption that because she smiles, because she shows up, because she says I'm fine, everything must be all right. People take her word for it at face value. They see her carrying the weight and balancing it so well that they forget it's heavy. They see her showing strength and mistake it for invincibility. They hear her laugh and think there's no way she's hurting inside. But they don't see what happens when she's alone. They don't hear the thoughts she fights when the room goes silent. They don't feel the pressure that weighs on her chest when she's trying to hold everything together, not because she is unbreakable, but because she believes she has to be. She's okay is often what people say about the one who seems strong, the one who takes care of others, the one who gets things done. She's dependable, she's resilient. She's the person who doesn't make a fuss. She doesn't complain out loud. And because she doesn't, people believe she's fine. They assume she's managing. They think she's tough enough to handle whatever life throws at her. But they don't realize that strength is in the absence of pain. Strength is often forged in the fire of silent suffering. There's a quiet danger in assuming someone is okay just because they don't say otherwise. Some people have been hurt so many times that they've learned not to share their struggles. They've been dismissed, ignored, or told to toughen up. So now they keep it all inside. They put on a brave face, not because they're not hurting, but because it's easier than explaining something no one seems to understand. Sometimes they say they're okay because they don't want to be a burden. They don't want to be seen as weak or needy. They say they're fine because it's safer than telling the truth and risking more disappointment. People often misunderstand the meaning of she's okay because they don't look closely enough. They don't hear the hesitation in her voice. They don't notice how tired her eyes are, even when she's smiling. They don't realize how much energy it takes for her to get up and go through the motions every single day. And because she makes it look easy, they think it is. They don't recognize that she's carrying more than she ever lets on. They don't see that the one who seems the strongest is often the one holding back tears at midnight, wondering if anyone would notice if she fell apart. She's okay can be a mask. It can be the armor she wears because it's what's expected. She's the one people go to for help. She's the one who offers comfort, who lifts others up, who makes things happen. And so they forget to check on her. They forget that even the strongest person needs someone to lean on. They forget that behind her steady presence is a person who sometimes feels just as lost, just as tired, and just as broken as anyone else. Sometimes she doesn't even realize how much she's holding in. She's gotten so used to being the strong one that it's second nature. She doesn't ask for help because she's used to being the helper. She doesn't cry in front of people because she's used to being the one who wipes away tears, not the one who sheds them. And over time, I'm okay becomes her automatic response. Not because it's true, but because it's easier, because it protects her from more pain, because admitting otherwise feels like opening a door she's not sure she could close again. There's a deep misunderstanding that people who seem okay, who seem strong, who seem fine, are not struggling. But they are. Everyone is carrying something. Everyone has a battle that's invisible to the rest of the world. And sometimes the ones who smile the most, who laugh the loudest, who give the most, are the ones who need support the most. But they don't ask. And because they don't ask, they are often left alone in the struggle. The misunderstanding of she's okay leaves too many people unseen. It leaves them fighting battles in silence. It leaves them feeling invisible in a room full of people. It leaves them believing that no one would understand, that no one would care, or that no one has the time to really listen. And so they keep carrying the weight. They keep saying, I'm fine. They keep showing up for others while waiting for someone, anyone, to show up for them. It's easy to miss the signs when you're not looking for them. It's easy to believe the words instead of reading between the lines. But if you pay attention, you'll see it. You'll see how tired she looks when she thinks no one's watching. You'll hear the long pauses between her words. You'll notice how she's always asking how others are doing, but rarely answers when someone asks her. And that's when you'll realize that she's okay doesn't always mean what it seems. The ones who say they're fine are often the ones who need someone to ask again, to mean it, to listen, to stay. Because behind those words might be a story they've been waiting to tell, a burden they've been carrying too long, a pain they've been hiding because they thought they had no choice. And sometimes all it takes is for someone to care enough to look past the surface and remind her that she doesn't have to carry it alone. Strength in vulnerability is one of the most misunderstood truths in life. We're taught to believe that strength means having it all together, that it means being unshakable, unbreakable, and untouched by pain. We're told to stand tall, show no weakness, and keep our emotions locked away where no one can see them. But the truth is, real strength isn't about hiding what hurts. It's about having the courage to show up as you are, flawed, human, and real. Vulnerability is not a weakness, it's the birthplace of connection, courage, and resilience. There is a quiet kind of power in being able to say, I'm not okay, and still face the day. It takes strength to admit that you don't have all the answers. It takes bravery to lower your guard, to let people see you without the armor. In a world that tells us to toughen up, to hide our emotions, to keep moving, no matter how broken we feel inside, vulnerability becomes an act of rebellion. It's choosing to be real instead of perfect. It's choosing honesty over appearance. And that choice takes more strength than pretending everything's fine ever will. People often mistake vulnerability for fragility. They think it means falling apart or breaking down. But vulnerability isn't about falling. It's about opening. It's about opening your heart, your life, and your truth to others, knowing there's a risk, but doing it anyway. Because behind every meaningful relationship, behind every moment of true connection, is someone who was brave enough to be vulnerable first. It's the friend who said, I've been there too. It's the leader who said, I don't have all the answers. It's the person who said, this is me, scars and all. And that moment, that honesty, is what creates space for others to do the same. There is a strength in being vulnerable because it demands trust. Trust in yourself, trust in others, and trust in the process. You have to trust that even if you reveal your struggles, you are still worthy of love and respect. You have to trust that the people who matter won't walk away when you show them your truth. And you have to trust that no matter how much you open up, you will still be enough. Vulnerability is the bridge between isolation and belonging. It's the way we say, I see you, and I want you to see me too. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you give others permission to be real as well. You show them that they don't have to wear a mask, that they don't have to be perfect to be accepted. Vulnerability breeds authenticity, and authenticity creates bonds that are unbreakable. When you're willing to share your fears, your doubts, your dreams, and your failures, you create a space for others to do the same. You create a connection that's built on truth, not illusion. There is also healing in vulnerability. So many people carry silent pain because they believe they're supposed to be strong enough to bear it alone. They believe asking for help is a sign of weakness. But the truth is, healing often begins the moment you speak your pain out loud. When you tell your story, when you admit your struggle, you take back your power. You stop hiding, you stop pretending, and in that honesty, you begin to heal. Vulnerability is how we let light into the darkest places in our lives. It takes strength to be vulnerable because you are choosing to feel, you are choosing to risk, you are choosing to love, to hope, to believe, even when you know there are no guarantees. You are opening yourself up to the possibility of rejection, of failure, of disappointment, and you're doing it anyway. That's courage. That's strength. To live with an open heart in a world that often teaches you to close it off, that's real power. The strongest people aren't the ones who walk around untouched by life. They're the ones who have been hurt, who have fallen, who have failed, and who still stand tall because they chose to feel it all and keep going. They are the ones who say, this is who I am, and accept themselves, even if others don't. They are the ones who show up with their truth and let that be enough. Vulnerability is the foundation of empathy and compassion. When you've allowed yourself to be seen, when you've felt the weight of your own struggles, you can look at someone else with understanding. You can offer them grace instead of judgment. You can stand with them, shoulder to shoulder, not because you're stronger, but because you've been where they are. You've felt what they feel. And because of that, your presence has weight. Your words carry meaning. There's freedom in vulnerability too. When you stop trying to be perfect, when you let go of the need to have it all figured out, you free yourself from an impossible standard. You give yourself room to grow, to change, to be human. You stop living for approval and start living for connection. You stop chasing perfection and start embracing who you really are. And in doing that, you discover a strength you didn't know you had. Strength in vulnerability is about standing in your truth, even when it shakes you. It's about showing up with an open heart, even when you've been hurt. It's about believing in yourself, even when you feel exposed. Because at the end of the day, vulnerability isn't about weakness. It's about courage. It's about choosing to be real in a world that often rewards pretending. And that choice is where true strength begins. And today, look deeper. Ask the question. Be the light in someone's dark room, because sometimes that's all it takes.